And guys, in this next news story, two notorious Liverpool brothers masterminded a drugs enterprise that covered hundreds of miles in the UK before it came crashing down. Brian and Anthony Sinner were responsible for the Scouse Dave Line, which flooded Gosport and Plymouth with Class A drugs. Anthony oversaw the Sinner OCG running heroin and crack through Gosport, while Brian controlled the line operating in Plymouth from his prison cell, where he was coming to the end of his 14-year sentence for previous drug supply offences in Liverpool. Their network saw them use drug addicts to supply at least 25 kilos of crack in Gosport and around 9.6 kilos of crack in Plymouth between January 2022 and March 2023. But their crimes began years before, with Brian and Anthony previously running a drugs trade in one area of Liverpool before they moved their illicit activities out of the city. Brian Sinner found himself on the wrong side of the law from the early age. By the time he was 18, he'd been handed a community rehabilitation order when his car was used in a burglary of a petrol station in Warrington in 2001. This was just an early sign of what was to come. In 2003, Brian was jailed for 3.5 years for leading one of Merseyside's largest organised crime gangs at the time. Brian, alongside Anthony Bushell, would steal luxury cars and sell them on, and within 18 months the OCG handled more than £1 million of stolen vehicles. The courts heard how the two gang organisers were involved from as young as 16. But when two undercover police officers infiltrated their network when they set up a used car dealership in the Kensington area. Speaking at the time of their sentencing, the Liverpool North Area Commander Mike Langdon said, "We set up an operation which was innovative in its makeup with a view to identifying and arresting the perpetrators. The officers involved were very courageous and were fully equipped to carry out their task." Said over £1 million worth of stolen cars were recovered, along with £3,000 worth of drugs and various household equipment. But the important thing for the community is to have these individuals off our streets. You only have to consider the way these people were driving the stolen vehicles around Kensington, usually unlicensed or disqualified. 3 years later, Brian had to have life-saving surgery after he was shot in the back as he ran away from a gunman outside his home in 2006. 2 years later, his younger brother, Anthony's first reported brush with the law was when he wreaked havoc in the city centre. The 21-year-old was handed an antisocial behaviour order barring him from the city centre night spots. Over an 8-month spell in 2008, the younger of the Sinner brothers was alleged to have intimidated every bouncer in Liverpool and people enjoying a light out. The following year, Brian was hauled before the courts again for his leading role in another Kensington-based organised crime group now known as The Big Show. The Notorious Hardman's empire was brought down thanks to another set of undercover police officers who infiltrated the firm. It was heard in Liverpool Crown Court how the gang would flood the streets with Class A drugs, with police simply scratching the surface when they first seized nearly 30,000 wraps and packages of drugs destined for the streets of Liverpool. Driven by greed for the good life, the gang were dripping in materialism as the cash from peddling the drugs went on luxury flats, plasma screen TVs, iron cars and designer gear. They included a bank clerk who broke down in tears as she was sentenced to 10 years in a box seen by police as an up-and-coming hardman and dished out violence indiscriminately. An undercover officer posed as an addict on the street for 15 months buying drugs from the gang on numerous occasions. The surveillance team watched on and worked up the chain until they got to those at the top. By the time Brown was sentenced in 2009, he was living in a luxury flat, but was told he was spending 14 years behind bars for his role in the conspiracy. So as we just said, the brothers both quite an extensive criminal past. So basically, the links that they made and their network, in this case, saw them use drug addicts to supply drugs in Gosport, drugs in Plymouth between January 2022 and March 2023. However, an extensive probe by Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary, supported by counterparts in Merseyside and Devon and Cornwall, led to the eventual convictions of the brothers who controlled the sophisticated operation. Several people integral to the network across the south appeared before the courts, and the Scouse Dave County line had been embedded in the town for a number of years, with local officers removing drugs from street-level dealers and distributors. The Sinners deployed a number of the gang to the area to ensure the dealing went ahead with community officers identifying a Scouse presence on the streets. Investigating officers observed the operation ran like a business with people paid a wage and working shifts before returning home to their families. Police were able to establish that couriers working for the OCG would either bring drugs down to Gosport and Plymouth in bulk or conduct cash collection trips, whereby proceeds of drug sales were collected from gang members and transported back up to Liverpool. During one trip, in November the 15th, 2022, a vehicle driven by a gang member, Gareth Roberts, was stopped by police near Plymouth. A search of his vehicle resulted in officers seizing around 3 kilos of Class A. As the investigation continued, police discovered phone contact between Anthony Sinner and his older brother Brian, who was determined to be overseeing the Plymouth line. Following a number of arrests, the investigation team noticed a pause in activity on the drugs line and took an opportunity to send out a text message en masse to drug users who had been in contact with the line, notifying them that it had been intercepted by police and signposting them to support services for their drug addiction. A few months later, in July 2023, Merseyside police supported the Hampshire force with a day of action, conducting further warrants and arrests, and a part of this, both Sinner brothers were arrested before being charged and remanded to prison for their involvement in the conspiracy. So, Anthony Sinner was jailed for 17 years and 7 months, while his brother, Brian, got 15 years and 9 months. Their co-conspirators, Gareth Roberts and Lee Illingworth, got 6 years and 9 months for 4 counts of conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. And the other one, Lee Illingworth, he got 2 years, suspended for 2 years. And those other guys who also got jailed. You got Adam Hughes, he was jailed for 8.5 years. Gary Cranny was jailed for 7 years. Demi Hannon got a 2-year community order. Lee Richardson, 9 years. Max Pike, 5 years and 7 months. Clayton Donnelly, 4.5 years. Donna Ewan got a 22-month sentence, suspended for 2 years. There's some others that still remain to be sentenced. Paul Norton, Danny Venning, Brett Cole Quainton, Christopher Crew. Chief Inspector Marcus Kennedy, District Commander for Fareham and Gosport, said county lines gangs have embedded in Hampshire for some time, and to put it simply, they're not welcome at all. People who live in Gosport are very passionate about their town, and when an organised crime group moves in, it impacts all of the community. These gangs are linked to violence, including use of weapons, as well as the wider community issues such as antisocial behaviour. They are people that you don't want operating in your area. They're very vulnerable, but sometimes drug runners can be vulnerable themselves and forced into this world, particularly if they are young or have been exposed to violence at a young age.